equipping you to navigate your grief journey after child loss. This is the Hope After Child Loss podcast. On each episode, we explore the many challenges of grief as guests share their stories of loss. It's also a place where you will hear about God showing up in our darkest moments and restoring meaning, purpose, and hope to shattered lives.
Give me 1 second.
Can you hear me, Rachel?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Sorry. I don't know what happened.
That's okay. No issue. Could have been on my end. The good thing is it's working now.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So are you off on Tuesdays?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I only work Wednesdays and Thursdays and then sometimes Fridays. But when they call me in, if someone needs off, I work for them.
Okay. So you still do some fill-in stuff as well as your, okay. Very good. Yeah, I think I remember at one time you told me that you were just part-time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I love it.
Yeah, well, that's good because it gives you time at home with your children.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad that you get to do that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what did your husband think about you doing this?
I think he supports me. I think he knows that I've had, not really a hard time, but I did have a very hard time about it. And he's always, when I'm passionate about something, he's always real supportive.
Good.
Yeah. So he even messaged me today. He's like, "Is your podcast today?" So yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. I think hopefully this will give him some insight maybe that he didn't have before.
Sure. Yeah.
You never know. I'm sure that you guys have you've probably talked a lot about it and he probably knows exactly how you feel for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, we have great communication when it comes to that. So.
That's good. That's really important.
Yeah.
Because it affects both of you.
We try.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything that is pressing immediately after we get through, or is, like if we go all the way to 12 o'clock, are you good?
I actually need about 5. I have to pick up my baby at 12 o'clock. So I'll need to get out here about 11:50.
Okay.
Maybe that's okay with you?
Oh, sure.
Don't let me keep talking because I'll talk.
Well, if for some reason you think I've missed it, why don't you just do this?
Yes. Okay. Well, that's perfect.
And I'll try to notice when we get to about 20 till.
Okay.
I'll try to start moving towards wrapping it up.
That's perfect.
Okay. All right. So what I'm getting ready to do, we're already recording, so I'll edit all this out, and I will just go ahead and welcome you to the podcast, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Okay.
You good with that?
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Well, Rachel, welcome to our podcast today. It's so good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, for our listeners, I need to let you in on something. Rachel and I have a relationship professionally because she is one of my dental hygienists. So I have known Rachel for a while, and last year she was on one of my regular checkup visits. She was just sharing with me about her experience of loss through miscarriage. So we started a conversation that has gone on for several months about her coming on today and sharing her story. I'm going to give her, Rachel, I'm going to give you, a minute or two just to share anything that you would like on a personal level. I've already mentioned that you're a dental hygienist, so if you want to put in a plug for the practice, This is your opportunity. And if you want to tell us anything about your family currently, you have the platform.
Okay. Well, my name is Rachel, and I have been married to my husband, Chris, for almost 16 years.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. And we have 3 children. We have a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and then a 3-year-old.
Are they all boys?
They're all girls.
All girls?
All girls. All
wow.
girls. And Let's see. I'm a big Christian. I love the Lord. He is my personal savior. And honestly, if it hadn't have been for him and his purpose for me and his allowing me to be able to lean into him, I don't feel like I would have been able to get through a lot of the traumatic events in my life. I haven't had that many, but the ones that I have, I thank God for him because just him sustaining me through it. That's about it. I am a dental hygienist. Something that it took me a long time to get. I went to school after high school and was not able to complete college due to illness. And then after I had my two oldest children, they got old enough where in between miscarriages, they told me that I probably shouldn't have another one, try and get pregnant again. So I said, well, let me go back to school and kind of finish. I promised my grandmother before she died, my nanny before she died, that I'd go back and get my education. And so at 38 years old, I went back to school and went to school to be a hygienist. So,
good for you. Great decision.
Yeah. I love my job. I love my office that I work with. I work for my dental family that we call each other.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. The dentists are phenomenal. And
would you like to put in a plug for that practice?
Sure. Yeah. I work for Florence Family Dental Care on Second Loop Road in Florence, and just the whole is exceptional.
That's a great group of people.
Yes. Dr. Brian Patterson and Dr. John Early are the two dentists that are there, and the whole dental atmosphere, Christian based, just great to work for, great to work with. And when I tell you the Lord lined me up and had a plan for me, I truly believe at 42 years old, I'm where he wants me to be.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful to say, God, this is where you wanted me to be. This is what you were holding out for me. And so, yeah.
That's really important. And there's an aspect of your story that includes Dr. Patterson that you shared with me while you were working on my teeth last year.
Yeah.
So we'll bring that into the story in a few minutes. So what I would like for you to do is let's just talk a little bit about your loss.
Okay.
Because I know that from previous conversations you did have an ectopic pregnancy, and then sometime shortly after that, you got pregnant again and you lost the baby along the way to miscarriage. So let's talk a little bit about that, Rachel, and what that was like for you, because I think our culture kind of diminishes I think a lot of the impact that kind of a loss has on a mom and a dad as far as that goes.
Sure.
But I think when I say our culture diminishes that, I think they assign in a lot of people's minds, probably never spoken, but I don't think they think of loss through miscarriage as being anywhere near as hard or as impactful on a mom as losing a child, even with stillbirth or a few months or a few years after birth. What was your experience with that? What did that look like for you, Rachel? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually?
Sure. Well, my husband and I struggled with, we had two beautiful, healthy children already. I'm always open, if that's what the Lord wants, give me another baby, sure. I'm just that type of mom where there wasn't a defining moment of I'm done having children for me in my heart. There are some women that I have known and respect, and they're like, I knew when I had my boy and girl, I was done. But I never really reached that point where I was finished in my heart having children. And my husband and I went back and forth on it. And so we weren't really trying to have a baby, but, and so I had complications where I found out later that I had an ectopic pregnancy. And we did, back and forth to the doctor, back and forth for ultrasounds. One minute I was pregnant and you got your hopes all up. And then the next minute, in the ultrasound, well, it looks like you're miscarrying. And then you go and have blood work. Well, you're pregnant still. We don't know what's going on. And another ultrasound, yeah, she's probably just miscarried. And so it was a a roller coaster ride of events of, I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that I was pregnant and something, they're mistaken. So it was, you get your hopes up and then it comes crashing down. And that was just the roller coaster ride. Even though I didn't even know that I was pregnant, it wasn't something that we announced and all of that. I didn't know. And so I was in shock. But then there's I think I was 10 weeks along, and they could not even find the baby. It was stuck in my fallopian tube, and they're like, you need surgery like right now. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. I have 2 other children. I got to make plans, so I had to go to the hospital the next day. And it was really like my daughter was phenomenal, but he couldn't find anything. And so it was more of like I think this is what's going on. It's more, exploratory, So anyway, come to find out, he basically told me, you need to be really careful. He had no idea why that I didn't have any more complications than I did because I was already 10 weeks along. And so anyway, that happened, and that was traumatic. Just the roller coaster ride. Well, that kind of put the spark in my head, like, I want a baby. Like, I know this is what I want. But skip to, they told us that, you probably don't want to have any more, because if you have it once, you may have it again. And, we already had 2 other children, and my husband's like, I couldn't bear the thought of losing you, and we need to think about our girls. And so I went into a mode of depression after that. One of the particular times of me being told that, I had a choice. My middle child now, she was coming out of her crib, and I held on to her crib because I just was like, well, what if I have another one? What if, and I remember saying, I need to let go of it. And I rode around with it in the back of my car for 2 weeks, praying over it. Because I knew that I needed to get rid of it, and I just didn't want to give it to anybody. And so I prayed over it, and I finally got the nerve to give it to A Choice to Make, which is a local, not crisis center, but it's basically helping women that are pregnant to help encourage them to not have an abortion.
Right.
So they kind of help set up women. It's a great Christian organization. And so I rode around with it, and I finally went and donated it. And it was over, and I went into this bout of depression. So skip to, I said, well, I think that I need to go back to school. So I went back to school, and, later on, probably about a year later, in between then, my grandmother passed away, and that was very traumatic. But as I started to continue back to school, like I promised her, I get pregnant again. And I'm ecstatic because this time I kept making them check, make sure you see the baby, make sure, and so they,
of course.
And so the weeks went by, and I had great energy. I was in such a great mood, and just went walking, trying to take care of myself. And I was about 10 weeks along. I went into an ultrasound, and I went by myself. My husband was not with me. It was just, never thought that there would be anything wrong.
Because at that point, there was nothing wrong.
Sure. I mean, once I saw there was the baby, and they said, yep, it's in yep, it's good. It was like free and clear, because I had never had any problems with my other 2 children during my pregnancy. And so just never even occurred to me. And so I went, to have the little ultrasound done, and they, what was devastating was the way the ultrasound technician handled it. She's like, yep, don't see a heartbeat. And I'm like, excuse me, what? She just was very matter of fact. And, once you hear that word, it's almost like Charlie Brown's mama in the background. You just really can't even fathom what is going on. And
becomes very surreal, I would imagine.
Sure. I remember sitting in the ultrasound room, and she left to go and get the doctor. And I remember sitting in the dark by myself. It's so vulnerable, just so devastating, just couldn't believe it. Anger came over. Oh, I was pleading to God, I know you giveth and you taketh away, but why? Why would you get me hyped up, God? Why would you get me so excited that I'm having another baby? I've already told my children. I've already announced it to my friends and my family. And, why would you do this? Please don't let this be happening. And then sure enough, my doctor came in, and he was so sympathetic. He was so compassionate. And he sat me in his office, and I couldn't even cry. I was so mad. Disbelief. And then it turned into I wouldn't say rage, but I was angry. I was
Sure.
I was angry because, and I tell people this, here I am, a Christian, a loving wife, a loving mother. I take my children to church. I put them in school. I have we have a good, stable home and raising our children right. And I want this child. And I got angry at God because here I am begging for this child, and there are women that are lined up before the pink or purple even lines up on the stick ready for an abortion. Like they don't want,
Yeah.
I'm begging. And yeah, I know I have 2 children, but I'm begging God, please God, give me another baby. This will make my heart content.
Yeah. I think that what you just shared is really important for people that are listening today, because Rachel has already shared that she was a very committed believer, committed to the Lord Jesus. And when she found out that her baby had died in the womb, you got angry with the Lord. And we want people to understand that just because we're Christians, life is not easy. It doesn't mean that everything goes like we want it to, or that we don't ever have to go through hard things. Or that we don't have to suffer the loss of a child or difficult things. Jesus promised us that in this world we would have trouble, but he said to be of good cheer because I've overcome the world. And so I want moms that are listening today and dads that are listening, I want you to hear what Rachel said, that she got angry with God, and God could handle that. God
Sure.
still loved Rachel. He didn't stop loving her because she got angry with him. He's a good father, and
Right.
he's the one who gave us all these emotions. When something like that happens, you can't be stoic. You can't not be upset. You can't not be angry in some way, shape, or form, right?
Sure. I think one of the pivotal moments is, and I was telling you earlier, I, as a Christian, look back and I actually have a lot of embarrassment to a certain extent because I did get so angry. I don't really like to dwell on it too much, but I did get angry, and then I felt terrible afterwards. But in diving into the Word and spending time with God and, allowing Him to speak to me and speak to my heart, one of the things that He instilled in me is the fact that it's okay. He understands. He knows my heart. He knows my mind. He knows what I'm going through every second before it even happens. He knows it. He knew that I was going to get angry. He knew. But one of the things he always tells me, or he did, especially instill in me that moment, is that his shoulders are big enough to carry that burden. His shoulders can handle my anger. His shoulders can handle my tears. He knows. He hears my cries. He heard my cries. He felt my tears. He heard me cry out to him, and he held me. And in so many ways, he held me. Even now, of being here today, he has brought me peace of knowing, you know what? I have 3 children on earth and 2 waiting for me in heaven. And this right here is solitude of saying this podcast of maybe hoping and praying that it will reach another mother that is suffering in silence or suffering with depression over it, to give them a glimpse of hope. This is my baby's purpose today.
Yeah.
And that is,
Yes.
as I was literally in there doing laundry earlier, I'm like, God, I know that this is what you want me to do. Boom, it just was like, this is their purpose. And so what I went through was something, I had someone tell me a lot, when I had the ectopic pregnancy, it was actually one of my preacher's wives, and she shared with me a powerful message. She said, God knows your tears, and he knows your sorrows, and he knows your pain. And you don't know why, but he will use your pain and suffering to bless other people with that. And that is your purpose, of the situation that you're in. You don't know it. And then because of that and me holding on to that, I have actually been able to witness and point people back to Jesus when they have called me since my miscarriages. I've had friends that have had miscarriages since then, and they've called me.
Sure.
And I've been able to point them back to Jesus. And so
Yeah, it's particularly in that early season of grief. It really is hard to understand how God can do anything good with it, right?
Sure.
Because it just is so traumatic and painful that we can't imagine anything good coming
Sure.
out of the death of our child. But it is absolutely amazing and pretty predictable that if we cooperate with what God wants to do, I mean, He'll give us time to heal. He
Sure.
doesn't expect us to go out and just, live as though nothing ever happened. But after He's given us time to heal and to process and start navigating that grief journey,
Right.
it is amazing how He can take that if we'll let Him
Well, and he does
and
promise.
encourage somebody else.
Yeah, he doesn't promise, rainbows and not really rainbow. He doesn't promise a life full of happiness. It's not all sunshine and cupcakes all the time.
Yeah,
But he
and
does
the,
promise to sustain us when we need, and he does want us to cling to him. He wants us to turn to him. He wants us to dive into the word and spend time with him because he can give you the comfort that no one else can.
right, and He also, in a relationship with Him, you can also experience joy, which is very different from happiness. Happiness comes and goes. It's a fleeting emotion. You
Right.
can be happy right now, an hour from now, you might not be happy, but the joy we're talking about is an underlying current that is there even when you're grieving. And
Sure.
it's very difficult to explain to somebody else, but it's very real. And Rachel, I want to circle back to something again, because so many women who have experienced miscarriage as you have, they do suffer in silence
Yeah.
often because people don't understand. And I think sometimes the moms are afraid to share because they're afraid that people just really won't get it. What's the point in even trying? But like losing a child like we did when our son was 26 years old, women who suffer miscarriage also have grief will impact them on a physical level, on a mental level,
Sure.
sometimes all of the above.
Sure.
For you, Rachel, what was the hardest part of that, the hardest part of grief and the way that it manifested in your life?
Well, there's a couple of things. Again, I think when people, when there are women that suffer in silence, it's because I felt guilty for mourning the loss of my baby and at 10 weeks because I know women that have had stillborns. I have had women that have had miscarriages way farther along than I did. I've had known women that have had a baby and then died within a week later. I have a friend that just lost her little girl from cancer, and there's that sense of, oh, how dare you, you weren't even that far along. I got told, well, at least you have two healthy children, or at least you weren't that far along. But
That
and
helps a lot, doesn't it?
yes, and I think that the reality of it is that when you're in a situation like that, number one, if if you're with someone and you've never experienced that, you have no idea what that person's going through, and you can sympathize, but you cannot empathize. There's and I a woman approaching me, that has never experienced the traumatic effect of, well, your baby's not, they haven't heard that, they haven't had to read the word abortion on their medical file. When you have to take the file to the operating area, I had to read that where it said abortion on my medical paper. And I'm like, no, absolutely, it's infuriating. That's traumatic. People that have never walked in your shoes don't really know how to empathize. And a lot of times your friends, your relatives, the people that love you the most, it's really sometimes where it may be uncomfortable because they really don't know what to say. And they just say kind of like this, they don't really know what they're saying. They don't know the depth of what what they're saying. And so to hear something like, well, you can try again. That doesn't excuse what just happened. Or oh, well, at least you weren't further along, or at least you had two other children. I'm still a mother. I still lost my baby, and it doesn't take away the fact that I was still connected. Their DNA was still in my body. I am still a mother to that child, and I still have a right to grieve the way I need to grieve.
Yeah. And when you are talking with somebody who has been through that level of loss and trauma, a phrase that you probably would do well to avoid is "well, at least," and followed by whatever you were going to say. Because as you said, Rachel, it doesn't help.
No.
Because what you've experienced is just as real for you, though it was a miscarriage, as it was for somebody like us who had a relationship with our son for 26 years. You still lost a child.
Sure.
And so I think you probably would agree from previous conversations that you and I have had that sometimes the very best thing that you can do for somebody who's experiencing this kind of loss is just show up.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
But sometimes the best thing you can say is nothing. You don't have to say anything.
Sure.
I can assure you there aren't any magic words that you're going to be able to find
No.
that are going to make her feel better suddenly.
No. And just being there and saying, how can I pray for you? How can I help you? How can I love you well today? Means more to someone that is grieving than trying to give them advice to a certain extent, because at that moment you really don't want to hear it.
No, you don't want to hear advice.
You do. You appreciate I appreciated my friends who tried. They do, people in your life that love you, they are trying. It's a lot of times with the miscarriage, it's uncharted waters. You don't really know how you're going to even react to it. And so I think that just saying to someone, I love you and I am praying for you. I would rather have someone say the words of, you know what, I'm praying for you, mean a whole lot more to me. And it's so humbling to have someone go before the Lord for you than a material object. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. And, difficult place to be. It's an awkward place to be. There's nothing easy about grieving, and there's nothing easy about being around a grieving parent.
Sure.
It's awkward and it's difficult, but sometimes we make it a lot more so because we feel like we're supposed to say something that's going to make a difference. Grieving parents don't need to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a project that you need to set your sights on fixing. We just need you to walk with us through it, and just to know that you're there, and it's okay to ask us questions. And if we're in a place where we can talk with you about that, we will. If not, it's okay. Just sit there with your friend or with your family member. Rachel, was there somebody in your life when this happened that really did make a difference? Somebody that came alongside you that really was an encouragement to you? And if there was, what did that look like? What was it they did that you'll never forget?
I think, other than my husband, of course, and my mother, my mother met me at the door to hug me and to hold me. I have numerous friends that showed up, and one particular friend literally just sat with me, encouraged me, let me cry without judgment, let me get mad or angry. There really wasn't, I had my church family really that really leaned in. They, of course, after you go through that type of surgery and I had to have a DNC, and you don't feel like cooking. They brought me a meal so that I could feed my family, or they helped feed my family, and just being there to support, say, I hear you, I know you, I love you, I'm here for you. That's what that meant to me.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what helped me along the way.
Yeah. There's also something that you shared with me in the office that day last year, that when you came back to work after that, something that Dr. Patterson did that really made an impression and really just was exactly what you needed. You want to share that?
Sure. So in the middle of going to school, I know I wanted to be a dental hygienist, but they told me at the beginning, it's going to take a long time for you to get in. And so I had actually gone in to get my teeth cleaned, and I had a small cavity that I had to go and get filled. And so they scheduled my appointment. Well, in the meantime, I found out that I was pregnant, and I went in, and the first thing that I told them was, I just found out I'm pregnant. So Dr. Patterson came in and he told me, he said, I've been a patient of his for a long time. So I wasn't even working there. I had been a patient, and he came in and he told me, and he said, Rachel, I don't really think that right now this is not something that needs to be done because it's small. And if you were my wife, I would tell you to hold on. And so hold on and wait for a little bit because it doesn't need to be done. And you're in your first trimester, you're newly pregnant. Let's not do anything. Come back if you were further along. You're not hurting. And so, okay, so I left. And then, of course, obviously I had the miscarriage, and being in the dental field myself and going to school for it, I knew I needed to go and get the cavity filled. So I went back to Dr. Patterson and they worked me in, and he came in the office, and the assistant came in and said, what are you doing here? And I said, I lost the baby. And so I know I needed to get this done. Sorry.
That's okay.
And he told me, him and his assistant told me how sorry they were. Matter of fact, I had multiple people that I work with now come in and tell me how sorry they were.
Yeah.
And one of the things that literally changed the trajectory of where I wanted to work was, he said, can I pray for you, Dr. Patterson? Let me pray for you. And he put his hand on my shoulder and he prayed over me. And that's something that I'll never forget. And it's still emotional for me. And so when I left that office, I remember saying, God, use me, send me wherever you want me to go in the field that you want me to be in, because I can't do this alone. But please let me work somewhere where I can do what he just did for me to other people. Allow me to bring you glory and to pray for people in their time of need like he just did for me, because it impacted my life. And so sure enough, like a couple of weeks later, actually not a couple weeks later, a month later, I conceived again. But before then, I got the letter where they said, congratulations, you made it into dental hygiene school, which first try, where they told me years.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and they told me it would be years, and so I got in first try. And after I had signed on the dotted line and accepted, 2 weeks later, or a week later actually, I found out, guess what, you're pregnant. And so I went through all of dental hygiene school pregnant, gave birth. And when God tells me not yet, this is what I mean by that. Not only did I conceive again, but I got into hygiene school, and then I would ride by his office and I said, God, please let me have a job there. Like, I really want to work for him. I want to work for a dentist like him. Please help me. And sure enough, his office, because I was a patient there, they kind of followed me in school. Literally a month after I graduated, I saw him at church and he confronted me. And I not immediately, and as soon as my kids went back to school, I started working for him.
How about that?
And first, I didn't interview anywhere else. I just kind of held off and let my kids have their summer. And so he approached me and offered me, I wouldn't, of course, had an interview, but offered me a job.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah, but just the impact of being bold for Christ, where he was saying, you know what, let me pray for you.
Yeah.
Where he empathized, he sympathized, and he said, gosh, I'm so sorry. That it changed the whole outlook of my future, of saying, I want to do that too. God, help me to do that too. And since then, of being able to work with him, I have been able to pray over so many of my patients, just like he did. And it's full circle.
Yeah. Yeah. So he answered those prayers that
Absolutely.
You now can pour yourself out to help others. And I know in the conversations that we've had, your passion for helping other grieving moms comes through loud and clear. And your compassion for them is so evident. Let me ask you this. It took you a long time to have peace about sharing your story on our podcast.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, some people don't feel comfortable ever doing that. But I'm glad that you did, Rachel. But what I would like for you to do is for those moms that are listening today, what is it that you hope sharing your story will do in the lives of somebody else who will be listening when your episode airs?
My hope is for women, mothers, to know that there is hope in Jesus, period. That's the first one.
Absolutely.
There is hope from Jesus, and he will sustain you. He will carry you in your grief. He will put people and line people up to point you back to him whenever you feel astray. It's okay to get angry. It's okay to feel even remorse for being angry. It's okay to grieve. It's like the ocean. You don't know how it's going to hit you. The current and the waves. You don't know how grief is, and that's literally with any grief. Suffering the loss of my grandmother devastated me. But there is hope in Jesus, and he will sustain you. Turn to him. Let him hold your hand. Number 2, it doesn't matter. It does not matter if you have miscarried at early in your pregnancy or late term in your pregnancy or had beautiful stillborn. You're still a mother.
That's right.
Their DNA is still in your body. It was conceived at conception, and you are still a mother. And it may not be the Mother's Day that you want, but you deserve it. You're still a mother. I'm still a mother, and to 3 here and 2 waiting on me. Some people don't believe that. Some people do not believe that, and that's their opinion. But I find peace in knowing that I have 2 waiting on me. And so that's what I want people to hear. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay. And you never know with what you're struggling with. You will help someone.
Yeah.
God
It
will
is
help you.
It is important to talk about it. And I believe that it's important for us to share our stories because I think when somebody else who's in a similar season of loss hears somebody else like you share their story, I think it helps connect at a heart level. It's one thing to have information about what you're going through, but it's another to connect with the heart of another grieving parent.
Sure.
And to hear where they've been and where they are now, and to realize that as hard as it is, as messy as grieving is, that yes, as Rachel said, there is absolutely hope and you will get through this. Just lean into the Lord, let other people in, and talk about it. And you've got to just walk through it one step at a time.
I also want to say to, your spouse, your significant, fathers.
Sure.
They grieve too.
Of course they do.
They grieve, and it's more of a, and this is not anyone else. This is from my own husband. He grieved because I grieved.
Right.
And my husband is not as vocal about his feelings as I am. But he grieved later on, talking about it. He grieved because there was nothing he could do to help me. There was nothing that he could do to save me and the pain that I was going through. There was nothing he could do to save the baby. There was nothing. And I remember what he did do was he did hold my hand. And he did let me grieve. But they suffer too. They suffer because it is something of a feeling that it's they can't help you. And that's a very sad feeling for a lot of men.
Men can feel very helpless in those situations. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, Rachel, because it is important for people to know that even though they may not know how to express it, how to process it or navigate it, it does impact men as well. And they do grieve. We do grieve. Rachel, I know from our conversation earlier that you have a child that you need to pick up from school. Yeah. So I want to respect your time, but I also want to just say thank you so much for having the courage to share your story. Because I do know that your story is going to encourage another grieving mom or dad or both. And I know that because of what you shared, they're going to find hope and they're going to be able to move to a healthier place because you were brave enough to be open and transparent and to give us a glimpse into what it's like for a mom who has lost a child through miscarriage. So thank you so very much for being my guest today, Rachel.
Well, thank you for having me and allowing me to share.
Absolutely. It was my honor and privilege.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us today. If you would like to offer your thoughts on today's episode, simply click the link under the episode summary. And if you're interested in sharing your story on a future episode, email us using the provided link. Join us again in 2 weeks to hear another story of how God meets us in our pain, creates something beautiful from the broken pieces, and restores meaning, purpose, and hope.